tirade as I walked out of the temple, a very, very happily married man. And 46 years later, we met at Thanksgiving dinner. No, that wasn't right. 43 years later at my Thanksgiving dinner table with the offspring and the bees that the honeys had collected, and the darling wife of my son Frank. No disrespect, boys. I love you all. And I want you to know that I'm very happy to have you in my family. This is what happened over that long period of time. Many, many things happened. I'll have to take more time now and tell you about our happy honeymoon in Salt Lake City. We had a very lovely time in Salt Lake, visiting some of the grand, lovely folks of my darling wife, and also spending time, a day or two we spent there. Then we really had to get back and go to work. They loaded the old car down to the hilt with the gifts from the reception of my brother Henry and his wife, and they put a great big sign on the back, "Just married." We sure wondered why people were gathering around and laughing and pointing their fingers at us as we left the big city of Salt Lake. But we traveled home very uneventfully, arriving home after about a similar length of time that it took to go down. Then we didn't have much time to set up housekeeping, but I should continue the story on the finance. This financial proposition hasn't seemed to worry me too much because it always worked out pretty good. I went up to see my former boss, Henry Hodson, and he informed me that there was plenty of wheat in the elevator, that I could get all the money I wanted. But I went down and I found out there was a great big fat lien on it by a bank in St. Anthony. So I went over to the county attorney and filed a labor lien. I went up to the elevator and they wrote out a check for the amount of the lien. And I went over to the bank and they asked me if I would sign the check, but I wouldn't. I says, "No, I owe the bank some money in Rexburg. You sign the check, and after you sign the check, I'll cash it over in Teton." Had I signed it, then that would have cleared the lien and I'd have been out. But I went over and got my money and took the cash up and paid my wonderful bishop. I will say here that in all my life I have never met a more wonderful man than Bishop Jacob Johnson. I still have great respect for his sons and daughters that are still living. We set up housekeeping in Rexburg on an arrangement where we would get rent-free from Jesse Baker if we would have his son stay with us and go to Rick's College, Rick's Academy at that time, and my brother Aaron stayed with us. And we got nicely settled in the home, and I was to get up the next, Saturday night we settled in the home, and I got up Sunday morning to split some wood for the fire, and I split the whole side of my finger off that really threw a monkey wrench in the machinery. Made me a week late getting to work, and then the expense of this thing. But we finally got to work, and everything went along fine. We had a lovely time together. We loved each other dearly, and we worked together, and I hope we sang together and so forth. We didn't quarrel at this period of the game, maybe a little later, but not to amount to anything. But anyway, I worked the whole summer, or the whole winter there at the sugar factory, and we'd had quite a lot of sickness. And in this sickness, we determined we were going to pay our debts as we went along, and we did, which were all doctor bills, and left us with nothing to live on for the winter. My brother John was working in the shops down in Pocatello, and we've been corresponding with this, and he told us to come down. There's plenty good work there. This was after the factory had closed, and we were dead broke and kind of getting a little despondent. So I went down and on the 5 o'clock train, and I went to work down there for the Union Pacific Railroad in the roundhouse at midnight that night. I had the midnight till 8 o'clock in the morning shift. This helped things out considerable, but it required us to leave our belongings behind. Aaron very graciously took care of our horses and our pig and our chickens and so forth. And this, however, done away with our plans to go on a farm and do the farming as we'd planned. I won't say much about the railroad shop, except I'll say this, that there we were made very, very happy, and the very lovely first daughter that was born to us, Alice, we loved her very dearly. We had a glorious time in Pocatello with our wonderful little daughter, but the work in the shops was gradually destroying my breathing apparatus. I had actually seen this. We had gone in there under the condition of there had been a strike, and all of the old men that had been in the railroad for years had left and gone someplace else to work. That made it necessary for them to hire all the needy farmers up and down the valley, and there was a lot of them. They'd come in there and they'd bring their poor old dogs with them. Their old dogs with nothing to do would just lay around there in the smoky roundhouse, and their average life would be, after they started this sleeping in there, would be about 3 months, and then the soot and the smoke and the gases from the coal that was burned in the locomotives would kill these dogs. It was doing the same thing to me, and one time my brother Henry come down to visit me. He had started a meat market up in Teton, and he asked us to come up there and work with him, and which I was very happy to do. So we'd gone down there in March, and March, just 2 years later, we went up to Teton to work for my brother Henry. Give me an opportunity to get away from the railroad shops, which I knew I had to do because my health was very fast leaving me. And we moved up into the Teton. However, we were delayed. Dinah had to stay behind for a while as she was pregnant with our second daughter. And then she came up to Teton, and we lived there in, I forget the name, it's a Stewart home, just east of the old schoolhouse. And there it was that our darling Pearl was born under very, very trying and hard circumstances, as mother nearly lost her life over this terrible ordeal. But finally, things leveled out, and we were very happy. This brought me into the butcher profession. I worked here in Teton all of this summer, and this fall, after I'd worked there all summer, Henry sold the business to a man by the name of Durr and Moss. And I had a very good friend in Fritz Siebold up at Newdale, and he asked me to come up and work for him at the huge sum of $15 a week. He had a lady working for him that he had been paying $12.50 a week. I went up and went to work for the huge sum of $15 a week, if you can feature this. However, these times were very bad, and even that seemed like at least it was a living and independence for us. And we got along with the very careful planning and supervision of my darling wife, who was able, it seemed to me, to always make something out of nothing. She never had much but nothing to do with. Now, we had an enjoyable time, and we worked here for Brother Siebold, and one priesthood day I was down in Rexburg, and a man by the name of Hugh Wright, as I walked up the aisle, stopped me and says, "Owen," he says, "I want you to come over. I want to talk to you." And I borrowed Fritz's car and went over to see Bishop Wright. And he was merging his butcher business with the Mallory brothers, who was starting the Red and White store in Rexburg. And he offered me the sum of $135 a month, which was a great raise. By then, though, I was getting $20 a week, which was $80 a month. But that was a great raise from $80 a month to $135 a month. We made this move. However, I should mention here that while we were in Teton, we added another very, very talented and beautiful daughter to our family, which was Donna Ruth. However, because of the ill health of her mother, it was necessary that she stay down in Sugar City, and I was, because the doctor couldn't get up through the high snowdrifts to Newdale. So she stayed down there, and I stayed in Newdale, and when I could, I would get down to Sugar City every weekend, every late Saturday night, and stay till Sunday night. To tell you how bad it really was, one time I had to walk all of the way down, and then to get back, there were just slate tracks, narrow slate tracks up and down over the drifts. And my wife's cousin came and took me, give me a ride home on his motorcycle up this narrow slate track. We were very happy to move into Rexburg. Then there we worked very hard for Bishop Wright, and there we found our very lovely daughter Dorothy, who was born there at Rexburg, and I continued on for Bishop Wright. I worked for him for 8 years. This terrible depression hit while I was there, where most people were accepting relief from the government, otherwise they would have starved. Bishop Wright called his 2 sons, Carl and Francis, and myself in, and we had a meeting. He said, "Now, boys," he says, "I feel like this is an emergency," and he says, "I'm not going to lay anybody off. We're going to work together, and we're going to see this thing through. We will take the truck, and we'll put bunks on it, and we'll haul wood, and we'll do anything else we can so that we make a living, and each one of us will only take $15 a week in cash, but we will make commodities, and we live on the commodities." Now, during this period of time, we built the new slaughterhouse south and north of Rexburg, and it was very hard with the man and his wife and 4 little girls and pay $25 a month for rent, to live on only $35 cash a month. But we lived, and through the frugal management of my darling wife, we were able to always sit down to 3 square meals a day, and the girls were dressed respectfully and clean, even though they weren't dressed elegantly and rich. But we had a very happy time. I haven't said a word about our religious life. I intend to record that on another tape, the various things that I did. But I attribute the success and the happiness, the joy that we get out of life to living the principles of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Now, Mallory's decided to expand, and they bought the business from Bishop Wright, who sold the business to them after I'd been there 8 years. And with the business, I put it this way, he sold me along with the business, because I was to go ahead and do the butchering. They contemplated putting a shop in their Shelley. I was to do the butchering for the two shops, and they would get a meat cutter down there to run the shop. I cut all the meat, bought all the animals, got it all well stocked, both shops well stocked, and then went down to deliver it. To get them to going, they didn't have a man to run it. So they told me, well, we'll keep you here. We'll hire Brother Carl Wright. Consequently, then I went to work there, and because of the fact of mother being pregnant with Mona, she stayed in Rexburg, and I rode back and forth for nearly a month until Mona was born on the 15th of June, 19... Well, I won't tell you when, but it was 15th of June. Right after that, then we moved all our belongings to Shelley, and that's what brought us down to Shelley, Idaho Falls. Over to Sprouse Wright and pick up some more tape. As I run out of tape on the number 4 tape, now starting the number 5 tape, I was just to the point where Mona Nadine came into existence in Rexburg, Idaho, June the 15th, 1934. As soon as Mother was able to travel, we moved down to Shelley and lived in Brother Mallory's home, that's the old gentleman's home, until we could rent a home. We finally were able to rent a nice home from Brother Hanson, and there we lived for 4 years. We were in Shelley. During this period of time, Franklin came into being, the 6th child, first son. We now had 5 daughters, and Frank made our last and our first son, our last child and our first son. We were there for 4 years, had a very good time. We lived in the Shelley First Ward, and there we held various positions, which I'll bring out in my ecclesiastical record when we come to that. We got an opportunity to come to Idaho Falls and open a market in connection with a man by the name of Martin Holloman, an old Austrian who had a fish market on Broadway. He was putting in a meat market and came down and talked to me about coming up and running his meat market for him, at which time I would own an interest. I worked with him for 2 or 3 years and did very well, except that he was a very vulgar old fellow, which was not a proper environment for my wife and daughters to come into the shop, and my customers also. He was very insulting and abusive in his foul language. I got an opportunity then to open a little shop up on Broadway, which I named the Rick's Market, and where I thought I would be able to make a go of it. I had a very good business, but I got some fellows who were not too honest to work for me, and it wasn't long that I found I'd lost my shirt and all my other wearing apparel, so it was time to abandon ship. Now, I had worked in the butcher business about 15 years, which had been a very fine experience in which we had made a fair living. At least we'd gotten along, and we'd been able to send our children to school and properly clothe them and feed them. As I say, we have never seen the time that we couldn't sit down to 3 square meals a day. Never seen the time when we couldn't go very happily to church as a group and worship as a group. Now, after this experience, I was able to had a very good friend, Sherman Howard, who had started a little grocery store over on North Yellowstone Highway. He begged me to come and open up a meat market along with him, which I didn't do. I'd kind of got discouraged in the meat business, but he had a 4-wheel trailer with a hay rack on it. He says, "Come on over, Owen," and he says, "We load this up with peaches and other fruit." And he set me up on the hill where the Kerr lumber yard it operated for a number of years, and there I sold fruit, sold a lot of fruit while the fruit season went. As soon as the fruit season was over, then he was kind enough to ask me to come and work with him in his store, which I did for the remainder of this year. Then Brother Wilkinson came along. They were then developing the new Fielding Memorial Park, which is a cemetery south of town. I went to work for the Fielding Memorial Park and worked for them nearly either 3 or 4 years, where I did fairly good. Then it was that Clarence Corden came and seen me with Sylvan Van Orden and asked me to go to work for the National Public Service Insurance Company, to work for them. This I did for a number of years. We had a lot of wonderful experiences while we worked for them, as every year, once a year, they would invite I and my wife, and in some years my family, at their expense, to travel to Seattle, where we would spend a week in convention learning better techniques in the way of selling. I enjoyed this very much, except that it required nearly all-night work. We would work in the daytime to secure proper leads, which we would go and talk to at night, as it was my policy that I would never talk to a man without his wife in selling them insurance, or vice versa. Consequently, the days were very long. We'd go to work about 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, and a lot of nights we wouldn't get through till midnight. This went on for a number of years. In fact, I sold for the National Public Service for 9 years. I had an experience while we were living in a home out south of the golf course, wherein I was sharing a cow. Hugh Murphy had left the farm to sell insurance for the company, and had brought his cow in so we could have milk. He'd put her in my pasture. I'd milk her morning, he'd milk her nights. And while milking this cow, she kicked me in a very vital place, which caused me a lot of difficulty. And I've suffered from that condition ever since then. My health started to leave, and because of ill health and other reasons, in fact, probably one of the contributing reasons was I had some appointments to fill out in the Kilgore country, out in the Camas Meadow country. And while we were out there, we went in one beautiful morning. It was in the middle of the winter, in late November or December. And as we went in, the beautiful sun shining, on the snow, the big drifts, and we drove in to that country. And while we were out there, it never changed all day, but we were out interviewing some people around 5 o'clock at night, and people from town came out and located us, and they says the state road crew, or county road crew, sent word that you're not to try to get out. You're snowed in. If possible, they'll come in and get you out tomorrow. So we went and stayed with a very good friend, Sherman Halverson, overnight. And as they promised, they brought their snow plows, and by about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they'd gotten through into us. They got the roads plowed out into us. And we went out with about 18 of all the local people were behind us in a big caravan, taking their cars out to leave them out to Spencer so that they'd have access to them all winter, reaching them either by snowplane or by dog sled. So this is very discouraging. It looked like, in fact, I come very close to having my car stalled in there for all winter long. The car I was driving at that time was a 1949 Studebaker. We got out, and Then there was a vacancy showed up in the temple. The engineer, Brother Vernskoy, had quit to go out to the National Reactor Testing Station to work. And I heard of this, and in an all-night discussion with my darling wife, we decided that probably I should apply for that job. Now, I had had some previous experience, being as I had worked in the railroad shop with mechanics and was very handy along this line. So I went over and applied, and I was able to get this job from President Kilpack. And I have worked in the temple now for, it'll be 15 years this coming January, now being the 30th of October, 1966. And we've had a very, very enjoyable time working in the house of the Lord. While it hasn't been big pay, yet when we went there to work, we didn't go for the pay. We went for the pleasure that we had of working in the house of the Lord in His service. And we have been amply paid, as I am the engineer and my wife supervises the laundry. We look forward yet to many more great and wonderful experiences. I could go into great length and great detail in some of my marvelous experiences of life. This I won't do. I just want to say that we've had a very lovely, wonderful, full life together, and yet look forward to many years in this wonderful work. If I think of more along this line, as it is, this being October 30th, 1966, I will close this part of my tape having given just a very light synopsis of things that's happened. Sometime I'd like to explain some of the experiences we had in our travels between Idaho Falls and Seattle, the many, many trips we made over different routes going and coming from Seattle, as it's been a very rewarding and full experience. We likewise had a marvelous experience in the May of 1958 in going down to Key West, Florida to visit with Pearl and Myron, where Myron is working in the Navy, and we made this trip down there in company with Brother and Sister Colson, who went as far as Chattanooga, Tennessee, and went down there and spent 2 wonderful weeks with our family. Had some wonderful experience fishing. I just seen a Mutual of Omaha broadcast The Wild World Kingdom, wherein they were capturing a moray eel for their aquarium down out of Los Angeles, and could say that Myron and I caught a big fellow down in the waters below Key West, Florida, and one had quite an experience catching him, as we caught him with a piano wire, which we're using for leader. He went through such gyrations and that he threw a half hitch around his own head, otherwise we never would have gotten him. I never seen such contortions and such a fight put up by a fish in my life. Now the tape is running out. I'm going to sign off now, and that which you shall hear from now on will be my church history. I might be able to add to this, and probably will in the future as I play it back and find a lot of the discrepancies and mistakes that I've made. Signing off. This tape, and I find that I gave you a wrong date in the time we went to Key West, Florida. That was in 1948 instead of 1946. Thanks to the good bookkeeping of my darling wife, I'll now be able to give you my ordinations, record of my ordinations and record of my various church activity. I do want to say this, and I want you to know, each and every one of you, that the gospel of Jesus Christ is true. There is only one way in this life that you can have happiness, and that is by living this gospel to its very fullest. You cannot receive one blessing without working for it, first desiring it, and then living for it. Now you have all been in the temple, or those of you who have, I'll tell you this now, and I want you to take it seriously, that the only thing you received from the temple was a gift from your Father in heaven. He laid it down, and you came and got it. Now, as any gift that you would receive, what you do with it is your business. If you want the blessings of our Heavenly Father, then you've got to keep the laws upon which these blessings are predicated, and they are many, and your promises are great in the house of the Lord. And you must go back, and you must go back many times to learn the magnitude of this wonderful gift that you have received from your Father in heaven. And I promise you that if you will keep the commandments of our Father in heaven and live this holy endowment, that He will bless you, that you will not be able to contain all these blessings. On the contrary, if you take these wonderful gifts out that you received in the house of the Lord, and through ignorance or otherwise you trample them in the dirt, that you will be the loser and nobody else. If you will live them, you will be the happy recipients, wherein you will have joy and rejoicing in your posterity throughout the eternities. Otherwise, this work is for naught. Now, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to get in, and are you going to have these blessings, or are you going to trample them in the dirt and have sorrow and distress instead of joy and rejoicing through the rest of your life? As Mother searches for my record, which she doesn't seem to be able to find, I have a few more words to say. It's just no more nor less than this. These blessings are predicated on 4 different principles. And the greatest of these is obedience. If you will obey and be obedient to the things of the Lord, then you can have all these things. First obedience, then sacrifice. To sacrifice for the building up of the kingdom of God. And then the great one is chastity. Keep your bodies clean, so that you may be the parents of a clean, pure posterity. For this is another great blessing, is to be able to give to these little spirits that comes into your care and keeping a clean body and a pure mind. Then the last and the greatest is consecration, wherein you are willing to consecrate all that you have for the building up of the kingdom of God on this earth and for the establishment of Zion. This is the way of life that will bring you joy and rejoicing, not only in this life, but throughout all eternity, for all time to come. For this is the law of God, and upon this all blessings are predicated. You daughters of Zion, keep your virtue, keep your bodies clean, keep them undefiled from the sins of the world, so that you can be pure before all men and your Father in heaven. And I want to testify here before all of you, from the bottom of my heart, that I have never known any woman except my darling wife, who I received in the temple of the Lord by the Holy Spirit of promise. And I hope that this will be true, and it will be true to the end of my days. Amen. I'll give a record of my life which is complete. My full name is Owen Winford Ricks. My father's name was John Ricks. My mother's maiden name was Juliana Frederica Hansen. I was born May the 16th, 1900, in Salem, Fremont County, Idaho. I was blessed the 1st of July, 1900, by Alfred Ricks. baptized on the 6th of June, 1908, at Teton, down in the canal, back of our place in Teton, Fremont County, Idaho. I was baptized by my father, John Ricks. I was confirmed the 7th of June, 1908, by Samuel Swindeman. I received the office of a deacon, ordained by James E. Stewart the 24th of June, 1912. To the office of a teacher by Walter Riggs, the 28th of February, 1950. To the office of a priest by Jacob Johnson, the 21st of October, 1917. To the office of an elder by Early Ricks, the 24th of August, 1990. To the office of a 70 by Stephen L. Richards, the 28th of September, 1990. To the office of a high priest by John A. Whitsoe, Apostle John A. Whitsoe, the 26th of February, 1939. I was married to Sadie Ina Jacobs, the 20th of September, 1922, in the Salt Lake City Temple. By George F. Richards. I was endowed in the Salt Lake Temple the 20th of October, 1990. This is the time that I received my endowments to go on my mission. And I was sealed to my darling wife the 20th of September 1922 to Sadie Ina Jacobs. I received my patriarchal blessing by John Donaldson on the 2nd of September 1916, and I departed from a mission to the northern states on the 21st day of October 1919. I was released and returned home from my mission the 22nd of March 1921. I was set apart for my mission by Apostle Heber J. Grant, Anthony H. Lund, and Charles W. Penrose. Released from my mission by Winslow Farr Smith. I served as president of the Young Men's Mutual in Teton in 1921, as Sunday school teacher in 1921, in Pocatello in 1922 as president of the Mutual. I served as superintendent of the Sunday school in the 4th Ward at Rexburg in 1925. I was set apart as one of the 7 presidents of 70, serving with Clyde Packer in the 177th Quorum of 70s in Rexburg State. I taught Sunday school in the 4th Ward at Idaho Falls, and then was chosen as first counselor to Lloyd Mickelson for the Sunday school superintendency in the 4th Ward. I was chosen as the first counselor to Warren E. Wright in the 4th Ward bishopric and served from 1939 to 1945. I taught the Deacons Quorum in Shelley. I had charge of the ward teaching in Shelley. I was set apart July the 16th, 1952 in the Idaho Falls Temple by President William L. Kilpack as a temple officiator. I served in this capacity until 1958, when I had a heart attack, and I was unable to serve further in this capacity. I have served since as a teacher in the Idaho Falls 7th Ward, and am now serving as a home teacher in the 7th Ward of Idaho Falls. Many rewarding experiences on my mission in the Chicago, Illinois, or the Northern States Mission under Winslow Farr Smith. He was a very great man from Salt Lake. And while we were out there, as I stated in my other history, the times were very, very severe. And for a number of the last 3 months of my mission, they were unable to send me any money. And during that time, I lived on a gift from Brother Farnsworth of $5 a week for the 3 months, and was able to live on that amount by living on beans and soup from free soup bones and so forth, until I was finally released from my mission to return home. I've had a very rewarding experience in all of these wonderful offices and callings in the church. I'm grateful for my experience. I'm grateful for my companionship with my lovely wife. And we yet look forward to many years together if we can have health to go forth and do as we're supposed to do. Yes, Mother reminds me I should mention the fact that I was made a great man by my granddaughter Luann about 20 months ago by presenting me with a very beautiful, wonderful little fellow by the name of Danny Lance, the son of Daniel Lance, the husband of my granddaughter Luann. I yet look forward to many more being made great a number of times. Seems like this is the only way it can be made great is by somebody else doing it for you. You know, it's a funny thing, but we've just received grandchildren a lot faster than we ever received our children. It took us 13 years to get our 6 wonderful children, and we've got 31 grandchildren now, and Pat, we've got them just a lot quicker than that. Well, I will sign off. Bless you all. Goodbye. Yes, don't say goodbye. That means a long time gone, and we're never gone. If we live the principle of the gospel, we'll be together forever and ever. This will complete my tape. This makes 5 complete tapes. Now I'll take them over to Alice and have her copy